In this section, we are going to look at where are our energy resources coming from, specifically focusing on the traditional means of gaining energy. So to begin with, let's look at where our resources are in the world. To look at coal, notice the black strip over here. This is the coal present in the Appalachians, which is what West Virginia's economy has been very much based on. There's also large coal deposits over here in the USSR. Right? There are other regions. There's a lot over here just west of the Great Lakes, if you will, in the U.S. Those are the major coal deposits. If we look at oil, major oil deposits are here, which is part of the OPEC type region. There are some more up here again in the USSR, and there's a smattering here, there, and everywhere else. The last resource we have is uranium, which we used for nuclear energy, and those are just kind of scattered around the globe. There isn't any one big deposit that jumps out at me. So where is the energy coming from globally? The biggest source of energy globally is oil at 38.6%. Coal and natural gas are pretty much tied for second, and then the rest of it is everything else. If you sum up the fossil fuels, that's 86% of the world's energy supply. Why are they called fossil fuels? That's a question we'll be looking at here shortly. Okay, so how do we get fossil fuels? To begin with, we start with a tree, and the tree is exposed to sunlight, and by photosynthesis converts the sunlight into a chemical energy. So if we start with a swamp, a couple 100 million years ago, and the plants die and they get buried, maybe they get put under some water for a while, and eventually buried completely just under rocks and dirt. That's what makes our coal seam, because all the pressure causes the dead plants to get heated, and between the pressure and the dead plant, the pressure and the heat, the dead plants transform into coal. In the U.S., 36% of our energy comes from petroleum as of 2011. Natural gas is 25%. Coal is an additional 20%. So if we again sum those up, that's 45 plus 36. I believe that's 81% of the U.S. energy supply comes from fossil fuels. Nuclear makes up 8%, and then currently renewable energy sources like wood, solar, geothermal make up only 9%. If you look at the U.S. energy consumption over time, the purple line here is the total consumption. Notice it's not flat, but not dramatically increasing until right around the turn of the 20th century, or year 1900, and then it kind of shoots up. That is the Industrial Revolution taking place. Originally, that was based off of coal, the blue line, and then that declined. And when that declined, oil picked up. What sectors in the U.S. use the energy? Most of it is used for industrial means. The next biggest slice of the pie, if you will, is 27.7% used for transportation. Commercial use is 18% and residential use is 20.6%. By appliance, this I think is very, very surprising. Which appliance uses the most energy per year? Right. Actually is your refrigerator, followed by your clothes dryer, and then your oven. And the thing to think about is the top 4 of the appliances here are ones that run all year round, major appliances, as opposed to like your heater, which really only typically runs for the winter months, or your air conditioner, which runs only for the summer months. Trend-wise, in the past, industrial wealthy nations like the U.S., they encompass about 20% of the population and use about 80% of the energy. Poorer nations are the reverse. 80% of the population consumes 20% of the energy. This is changing. And the reason it's changing is because China and India, which are typically poorer countries, are rapidly growing and soon will be using comparable amounts of energy as the US and Europe. Each year in the US, over 300 gigajoules, so giga means 10 to the ninth, so a trillion joules of energy is used per year. That's equivalent to 60 standard barrels of oil. If you go to a less developed country like Bangladesh, it's less than 1 gigajoule per year. So think about this. Americans are consuming as much energy in one day as some people do in an entire year. It's pretty astounding. Okay, so why the move away from dependency on oil and other fossil fuels? In the U.S., we use about 6.5 billion barrels of oil per year. As of 2013, we produced 2.5 billion and imported 4. This has changed a little bit since that. As I said on a previous slide, India and China are growing quickly. China's the second largest importer of oil since 2004, and India's consumption has doubled since 1992. This makes a great deal of competition for oil and therefore gasoline, and this increases prices. Does increased energy use correlate with higher standard of living? And the answer is no, not at all. If you look at Sweden or Norway, they use about half as much energy and have a much higher standard of living, plus government-funded medical care. In those countries, conservation is just a part of their culture. They do it naturally. If you look at Qatar and, amazingly enough, Venezuela, both of those are OPEC nations. They're energy rich. They have a lot of oil, but their standard of living is very low. So we really need to get focused on conservation.